Hello and welcome to another episode of the CultureCast. This is EXP's official diversity, equity, and inclusion podcast. And I'm Cody, your Senior Manager of Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion. And this is the podcast about what makes us us. We're thrilled to have here today the co-chair of our Climate Action Network, Alex Fullerton. Welcome, Alex.
Thanks for having me.
And if for folks who don't know, Alex is one of our only co-chairs who comes at this from a staff perspective. Alex is also representing EXP Canada, so he ticks a lot of boxes for us.
Yeah, some of you might see EXP Can in there. It's not Canada, it's EXP Climate Action Network. Yeah.
Right. Climate Action Network. Yeah. And so Climate Action Network is one of our, what we now call the DEI Foundations programs, where essentially if you have an idea for a group that's not already covered by one EXP, then you can bring that idea to us at the DEI team, and we can help foster your group and help you put on some events and see if it catches fire. And if it does, then we bring you to 1EXP, and you could become the next 1EXP resource group and be a founder and co-chair of that. Alex is part of that movement, and happy to say that Climate Action Network was the very first one of these foundations groups that attained this status, that became a 1EXP resource group through hard work and a ton of events and dedication.
And you know what? We wouldn't be where we're at without you, Cody. So thank you so much for helping us come to light.
Appreciate that. So today we're talking about a pretty serious topic, right? We're talking about climate disasters, and we've got these everywhere at the moment, right? We just experienced a ton of wildfires in Canada. We had a gigantic wildfire / tropical storm in Maui. And then we just had a hurricane plow through the Gulf of Mexico through Florida, with another one on the way. So, Alex, can you tell us, I know you were particularly affected by the recent wildfires in Canada. How did that personally affect you?
So I'm in British Columbia in Kelowna, in Canada. And so you might have heard about it on the news. West Kelowna, which is actually on the other side of the lake, was hit pretty hard by the wildfire that was in our community. And that just has ripple effects within the entire community socially as well. And a lot of pressure, and it's not just the fire, but all the smoke. And it's really hard. For myself, I wasn't impacted. I was on the Kelowna side of the lake. So we were very fortunate. My partner, her family, her neighborhood was actually hit pretty hard. They were very fortunate because just the location of their home, it was kind of protected by other homes that were around the perimeter. And so at that interface between the wildfire and the homes, those ones unfortunately were lost. And so like when I say ripple effects of throughout the community, that social pressure, that stress, those folks are going through a really hard time right now. And it doesn't stop there. It's their friends, their family. And so everyone that's connected to those folks are feeling for them and out there supporting them. And it's the same with any disaster that happens around the world, no matter what it is. You're going to have that direct impact, and then you're going to have that indirect impact as well. So we're there supporting them. When they evacuated their place, we went to the other side of the lake. They have a boat on the lake, so their property is kind of, you can see it from the other side of the lake. So it was a little bit of a traumatizing experience because we could see their neighborhood from the other side of the lake. And because of the thick smoke that was happening, occurring at the time when we arrived to look across the lake to watch things unfold, which was probably a bad idea in retrospect, we could see the neighborhood was engulfed in flames. And so there was a lot of tears, there was a lot of grieving because we thought the home was gone, right? But we couldn't tell if it was because the smoke was so thick. even though very fortunate it wasn't lost, the home, it still had that impact on us, and it will continue to have that impact on us. This fire that we just had 20 years ago, there was another fire that hit our community like almost to the same day, which is crazy. So yeah, that's our our situation here. But in Canada, speaking on a national basis or provincially, it's the most fire active season, and the season's not even over yet. When I say season, I mean the wildfire season.
Right.
And so it's a record breaking wildfire season for all of Canada because we've been hit across the board. And this is because of uh, global warming, or what they're now calling global heating, because it's getting a lot hotter. And as temperatures rise, on for comparison's sake, a temperature increase on the equator of 1 degree could be like a 5 degree temperature increase. Just not exactly, but I'm saying the when you're higher up in the latitudes, closer to the poles, you're going to see a more significant temperature change globally. So
Wow.
when you're talking about global warming or global heating, that's just an average, but you'll see there's a difference in latitude. So us in Canada, our temperatures are increasing more than the lower states, for example.
Right. Wow. And that's, I think it was last month that the global average temperature reached an all-time high, which was I think they broke that record 6 days in a row or something like that. And it's pretty scary, and it's real. We don't typically have these one of a kind generational storms a few times a year, right? And that's the way it's been happening, right?
Yeah, exactly. I saw a statistic on the 2nd of September. So it was 66 days consecutively of record breaking temperatures in the northern
Oof,
hemisphere.
oof,
Um,
gosh.
Yeah, so you're right. You're absolutely right. Like as temperatures increase, we're going to see, or we are seeing already, the increase of frequency of these natural disasters, and also the intensity of these natural disasters.
Right.
Um, and with that comes a slew of problems. Like how long are we going to be able to finance the recovery of these things? So instead of being reactive in um, trying to mitigate the damage of climate change, we need to have a proactive stance on this, and people have been saying this for a long time. um, just need to recognize that climate change is real, it is here, it's happening, and we need to do everything that we can um, as soon as possible.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. And I think for those who are hesitant about climate change, about our need to do something about climate change, I don't think there's ever been a clearer message sent to us by our environment that something is going on than us seeing all of these storms and all of these events back to back to back to back. I mean, uh, almost the entire United States was covered in a cloud of smoke from Canadian wildfires this summer, and I don't know that that's ever happened, right? Um, and we have events like in my little town of Danville, Illinois, where I live. This year we had a unique storm that hadn't been seen in the Midwest since the 1800s, called a derecho, which I'd never even heard of. But it's where these two gigantic thunderstorm clouds that are basically flat hit each other on their flattest surface and create this line of damaging wind and rain and all this. And I mean, it was like God himself came to Danville and just clapped his hands and every tree fell. Like it was like
Wow.
we'd been hit by a tornado. It was the craziest. Yeah. Um, Everybody recovered, but in my little town of Danville, every single home had one or more trees down, which is wild. It's wild for a storm that we didn't see coming,
Yeah.
right?
I don't mean to laugh. I'm just like snickering because it's like, nature has a way of forcing us to pay attention, doesn't
Right,
it?
right, right. And it's these new storm types that scare me. I'm from the deep south where I'm used to tornadoes. I'm used to hurricanes. I'm used to tropical storms. I've been in a house while its tin roof was peeled off by a tornado, right? So I've seen climate disasters. I went down and volunteered during Katrina. You know, I was in South Georgia at college at the time, and that was just so devastating. And to think that we're more likely to get storms like that, and so many of our cities are not prepared,
Hmm.
right? It
Speaking
speaks
of
to what you
which,
were saying about being proactive.
and I wanted to talk about this actually. So this past weekend, sorry, this past long weekend that we just had, Las Vegas got hit with like a torrential downpour, and it flooded Las Vegas, like in the middle of Nevada desert. So all of these, when we're talking about climate change, and just some definitions for the folks that maybe aren't fully aware of what that means. So you have outside, you look at the weather, and that's the weather. That's a moment in time. Whereas climate is a pattern over time. So
Yeah.
the pattern that exists currently enables the biodiversity that lives in that area to survive. So when we're talking about climate change, you could go from like a really forested area to a desert area, or reverse. It could go either way. So that's climate change, changing from one status to another. But what isn't discussed a lot is the turmoil in between, and that
Mhm.
is the unsettled pattern as the world tries to correct itself, its weather patterns that it has. As it tries to correct itself, there will be turmoil, and that means there's unpredictability, and with that comes threat to our farming, to our crops, and things of that nature. So it puts planning into a lot of danger. It's a difficult situation to plan for when you don't know what's going to happen next year.
Right, right.
Yeah.
Um, so can you give us some examples of some other natural disasters that have been amplified by climate change?
Yeah, you touched on a few. So there's like the wildfires in Canada. There's the tornadoes, the hurricanes, the new one that you mentioned that I'm sorry I forgot the name about already.
Right.
But this is like these new events that maybe don't get seen, or they're seen in like once in 100. Also, for folks, if you've heard that term, once in 100 year storm, all that means it's a 1 in 100 probability. It's not once in 100. It's like you could have like 1 in 100 storms happening back to back in multiple years, and then they'll change that. But your question was what other kind of storms are amplified? Hurricanes are a big
Yeah.
one.
Yeah.
Hurricanes are a big one, and if we look at what that means for hurricanes, and as ocean temperatures rise, that means there's more readily available moisture for those hurricanes to absorb that moisture, to become larger, to be stronger, and that will happen a lot faster because of that. Whereas if the temperatures were lower, the water temperature had to increase in temperature a lot more before it would become energy for the hurricane. So size of the hurricane, but also the reach of the hurricane. So earlier, before I was talking about the as global warming temperatures increase, well, the higher latitudes, farther away from the equator, they are rising in temperature more. So what that means is that hurricanes can reach farther north or
Mm.
farther south, depending on what hemisphere you're in. So frequency, intensity, and reach of the hurricanes, for example. And I mean, like, that's a whole nother topic talking about each individual um, weather occurrence.
Right.
Yeah.
And just even with the ocean temperatures rising, we saw what happened off Key West with the coral there. That was insane. right? Was it something the ocean temperature was over 100 degrees and was bleaching these corals and basically causing a mass extinction? So people were trying to move them. It's That's crazy, right? That's crazy hot for the ocean to
Mhm.
be.
And if you think about it, it's like the canary in a coal mine. You can see what's happening there, and you can see that there's this life form down there that exists within a range of temperatures. And if that temperature becomes too high, well, it won't be able to survive. And that's going
Mm,
to happen in various different places on the planet. It's already happening in various different places on the planet. Like you look at these uh, desert countries where that temperature is getting too hot for people to survive.
mm,
And what's that gonna do? That's gonna cause those people, because they can't live there, they're gonna have to move. So
right.
this is like a climate refugee situation.
Yeah,
And
yeah,
so as people are relocating, you have to think about, okay, well, where are they going to? The areas that they're going to, are do they have the support available there to provide those people support? Is the infrastructure there? Are they even are Is that area themselves even facing their own climate impacts? So it's a very complex problem. I don't expect everyone to grasp the gravity of it. It's massive. I try
mm,
not to be a downer, though. It is a downer situation, but in my experience, I wanted to talk about this too. When we're talking about um, this feeling that we experience once we, realize the gravity of the situation, people are filled with climate anxiety. Like, what is the future going to look like? And how can I reach out to other people to talk about this? Like, there's still deniers amongst us, for
right.
Craig's sake.
Yeah,
um, but speaking from experience, I would say reach out to those folks that are aware as well, and just talking about it helps with that feeling. We at the Exp Climate Action Network, one of the very first things that I did was I put a resource database to get together for mental health resources that people can tap into if they're experiencing climate anxiety. And even the community is even trying to change the term from climate anxiety to climate dread, because anxiety is like a, is it going to happen kind of thing, to climate
yeah.
dread, which is like, it is
It
happening,
is happening. Yes,
and I'm dreadful about what's to come, kind of thing.
right.
But yeah.
Yeah, I think there's a lot to be said about we got a generation of kids who are in this state of climate dread who, and unfortunately a big part of that is the belief that it's too late and there's nothing we can do about it, right? But there are things we can do to to address this as best we can, right? It certainly would have been better if we would have um, grasped the gravity of this 50 years ago, 100 years ago, right?
Yeah.
Um, but that's not where we are, and we have to be realistic, right? So what
Mhm.
can we do today? Um, and speaking of that, what do you think about how does EXP Realty, as a real estate brokerage, play a role in addressing the impacts of these natural disasters on our housing and our communities?
This is a good question. Um, the effects of climate change, that's a tough one. But I can tell you, for like, to help mitigate climate change, um, the same as for any company. And so what I mean by that is, try to incorporate sustainability on every single level within the company that you operate. So wherever possible, reduce your consumption. And it's funny when you talk about sustainability and being more efficient. Well, that also translates into cost reduction, which is good for the bottom line, anyways.
Right.
So, oftentimes there's that fear, like, oh, if we try to be more sustainable, it's going to cost us more. Well, you might be pleasantly surprised that if just operate more sustainably, you'll be operating more efficiently as well. So On a company level, every single aspect that we can look at to improve our sustainability is paramount. And matter of fact, the SEC, the U.S. Security and Exchange Commission, they're putting forward proposals to require different climate reporting for shareholders, so that
Right.
when shareholders are investing, they're going to have a more clear picture about a company that they're investing in, the impacts that they have on the environment, but also it's ESG across the board, so environment, social, and corporate governance. So
Right.
that's what the SEC is putting forward. So that's the company level, but companies like real estate brokerages, we have an immense potential to expedite the transition to a sustainable real estate industry. And how do we do that is through all of our agents. So all of our agents are in different communities, especially at EXP because we're all remote, um, all in different communities everywhere. So each community is going to be faced with its own challenges. So how can we, first of all, raise awareness to our agents about climate mitigation and climate and sustainability, and how can we equip them with the tools so that they can operate their businesses more sustainably, but also communicate the offerings that are available to their clients. So through the like in the US, through the Inflation Reduction Act. I'm a Canadian talking about US stuff, so please correct me if I'm wrong. So through the Inflation Reduction Act, there's a ton of funding available from the federal government that they've allowed for local governments and statewide governments to tap into for advancing or shifting towards sustainable operations on many different levels. I'd encourage everyone to check that out if they haven't already.
Right. Yeah, that's great. And it's one of those things that when you and I have been on the front line of this with EXP, of measuring our sort of carbon footprint and seeing how we're doing as a company. And it's one of those situations where, because we're a remote company, we don't have major corporate offices. We really have eliminated a lot of air travel, and a lot of the footprint stuff that's associated with having a big office in every major city, which, if our company wasn't remote, is essentially the model we'd have. We'd be in several cities in a big office building. That's great. What we can't measure is what's going on with our agents, right? What about the agents' EXP Realty offices? And we would encourage you to look into energy efficiency and sustainability when it comes to the offices that you operate for your teams. We also can't measure what you're doing with your vehicles as you travel back and forth to showings, right? So we would encourage an energy efficient vehicle or electric vehicle or a hybrid vehicle at the very least, right, to cut down on that, or try to do more virtual showings and that kind of thing. And something else that I bring up a lot that I think people miss is, in the United States, we have many, many, many energy companies which give their clients a toolkit, or perhaps sometimes even free tools, to do an energy audit on their house and help them come into a more modern state of energy efficiency. Here in Illinois, I have a company called Ameren that does my power. 2 houses in a row, I've had them come out and do an energy audit for free. And at my last home, they saw that my furnace was 40 years old and my AC unit was damaged in such a way that it had a freon issue, whatever. And my attic had old shredded newspaper insulation. They mitigated all of that, a $12,000 cost, for free,
Nice.
which cut my energy bill down to a quarter of what it was previously, right? If we as agents know that in the communities we serve, there are these type of offerings by the energy provider, we should be telling our clients this as a benefit of the house that they're moving into, right? Or getting the ball rolling on those processes if we can. Keep a contact at that energy efficiency space. And if you see a house that you're selling that has an older furnace, here's a selling feature. I know that Ameren or whatever energy company would replace this, right?
And as the demand for more sustainable homes increases, because it is significantly, people are going to be asking their agents about these kind of topics. And
They are.
if you aren't knowledgeable about what's available out there, unfortunately, they won't want to work with you. They're going to be looking for those that are educated on these matters
Yeah.
and that do know aware about the different benefits that are available to them.
Yeah.
Um, just quick note on that. We talk a lot about residential, but it's also in the commercial space as well.
So true.
Big time. So any of our commercial agents, I definitely encourage you to look into what's available to you as well.
Yeah, for sure. And another piece of this is if you're an agent and you want to learn more about this, and I'm telling you, it's something you're going to need to learn because it's another one of these pieces that young home buyers, which I know in the current United States market is sort of an oxymoron, right? Young home buyers, but they are increasingly of a firm belief in climate change, right? And they are really convicted to want to do their part, and everybody's money is tight at the moment. And energy efficiency savings is money that stays in their pocket. This is something you need to know for your young home buyers. And I would encourage folks, NAR offers a green certification. That's a big help to help you learn about this. Or if you consider yourself an expert already, why not go get certified, right?
Mhm.
For both
Exactly.
for
Yep.
both for experts and for newbies, I think it's a great course to take, and something that hopefully we're going to be able to offer as a company soon, right? And more better, firmer access to that, easier access to that.
Mhm. And on that note, the upcoming EXP Con, so we have the approval to actually host our own EXP green certification. So um, I'm not the best one to talk about that because Keith is spearheading that, my co-chair. But it'll provide our agents who attend it with the basic knowledge and tools to navigate that with their clients.
Yeah, and for those who are aware of the EXP luxury division, which EXP has talked a lot about, it follows the same sort of format, right? It's a way to learn about a new product segment and a new way of doing business, and that's what this EXP Green initiative that we're really pushing right now from the Climate Action Network and from the DEI team, is that's what it's going to accomplish, right? So
Very
I
excited about that.
am very, very excited about it. Yes. It's not to be confused with the NAR Green designation, but it will be an EXP Green certification. And yeah, EXPCon is going to be a big deal for climate action. So go check that out. Keith is going to have that session. I will even tell you when it's going to be. The EXP Green certification will be presented on Thursday, October 5th from 9 to noon, with speaker Pamela Brookstein.
Go check it out. Be there.
It's going to be great. So tell me about some other initiatives that EXP Climate Action Network has implemented to mitigate the effects of climate change and climate anxiety and all of it. Just tell us a little more about what Climate Action Network is doing.
Yeah, for sure. As you mentioned in the beginning, we're volunteer staff and agents that are coming together to promote anything that we can to help mitigate climate uh, change. So, the name Climate Action Network, that's the original name that we chosen because we wanted to shift the concept away from the doom and gloom to actually action. And I can speak from personal experience that when faced with all this dread that we have, the best thing that you can do is get connected with others and take action together. Because when you're doing something about it, you feel way better about it. So things that we've done, we host events regularly, and that's all thanks to my team of amazing people that we have here at the Climate Action Network, hosting all sorts of different topics that you'd be very interested in, from mortgages even to solar panels to feng shui. I would suggest checking out our playlist. We have the links in our EXP workplace group, EXP Can workplace group. Other things, I put together a resource database, like I mentioned earlier. So if you are feeling overwhelmed or struggling with anxiety or the dread, check out the resources that I put together. There, we're not reinventing the wheel here. There's resources, tons of resources available to anyone, no matter what position you're in. You can tap into those. I tried to put as many as I could together that would offer a spectrum. We also have real estate resources in there. We have a lot of books that you can read about what's going on, or to take action in your personal life, or to bring it forward within your own networks. Yeah.
That's fantastic. Yeah, we
Thanks.
love the Climate Action Network. You guys are putting on events at a cadence that many of our other groups can only aspire to, right? So we really, to me, EXP Can, I've said this to you before, and I'm very public in saying it, is sort of the blueprint for how a resource group should run. I think you guys are very, you have a firm way of doing business, and it works, and the level of content, and not just the quality, but the quantity, you got both there. It's great. It's great. So as co-chair of Climate Action Network, what advice would you give to our agents and the wider community about how they can contribute to climate action and disaster resilience?
I said before, get involved. That's the biggest thing. Reach out to people in your network. Start talking about it. It's almost like a taboo subject, but I assure you, everyone is thinking about it to some degree. Just start those conversations, and connect with people around you to think about ways that you can help. Yeah, there's the struggle between, oh, I'm just an individual, what can I do, versus like, all these companies, they're the ones that are responsible. Well, I can tell you that everyone needs to pitch in on every single level, and it's the individuals that work at these companies that can make change within their organization. So talk to literally everyone that you can about it. Don't be fearful about it. You're going to find people that you won't be able to talk to about it because they don't believe in it or whatever. And then you're going to find people that you align with, and you can really work together to bring positive action and change within the community. So that's the big thing. So the 15th, so the Global Climate Fridays for Future is happening. So if you're very passionate about it and you want to really get involved, you can get out and show your support for those folks that are pushing for change within their local and national communities. So that's the Fridays for Future global climate strikes that are happening.
So yeah, that's essentially just telling your government, hey, look, we're here, count us, we are interested in this, right? We need action. That's an initiative led by Greta Thunberg, who everybody who knows climate action knows who Greta is, and it's another one of those youth voices leading the charge here. Yeah, I also I'd be remiss not to mention at some point in this podcast about extend a hand when it comes to these climate disasters, right? So we have an extend a hand program run by the wonderful Annie Pellegrini, who was just a guest on our podcast, who, if you have a situation where you're an EXP agent or employee and you experience a climate disaster, extend a hand can help. Extend a hand is our 501(c), our charity, which agents can contribute to, which is there for this situation, right? And we're happy to say that while it has been a national United States charity for a long time, we are now available in Canada as well. So if you've got anybody that's feeling the effects of the Canadian wildfires or any new disaster that may pop up, and Extend a Hand isn't just for climate disasters, but that's what we're talking about. So that's what we're going to focus on here. If there are funds available to you, essentially, right? So all you got to do is reach out to Annie Pellegrini or go to that website that we just had up, extendtohandcharity.org, and you can get more information about that.
I don't want to talk about too much personal stuff, but it was truly amazing to see the support that I received from everyone here at EXP, Cody, yourself, Annie, Carolyn, Mike, Vane, like so many people that reached out to see how I was doing because the fire was in our backyard. And one step further to see that they implemented a disaster time off in Canada for those people that are impacted in Canada, the staff members here that are impacted by the climate disasters, that you can tap into that. It just goes to show what kind of company we are and the people that are in the company. And I can't speak highly enough about this company.
Yeah, that was quite the reaction. You were very present on my mind during that, and I was struck by how many people reached out to me and said, "Have you talked to Alex?" Right? And and not just you, but our other, Canadian. I have many Canadian folks in my Rolodex that I consider good friends. You at the top of that list, obviously, which makes this conversation so easy to have, right? Because we talk like this all the time. Anytime Alex is like, "Cody, I need to call you. I've got an issue." Then we talk for 2 hours about the state of the world and the country and politics and religion and everything, right? Like we're good at talking to each other, but it is. People think that because we're a virtual company, because we don't have real life offices, that maybe our connections aren't that strong. I couldn't disagree more, right?
I'm
I've
right there with you.
formed some
Yeah.
really strong bonds with some folks that I've never met before, right?
Yeah.
In person. And that's the spirit of where Extend a Hand comes from. It's also sort of the spirit of where the Climate Action Network comes from, is about this notion, this intrinsic DEI notion that you don't have to know somebody or be their neighbor to care about them and their future, right?
We're all a global community, right?
That's it. Jonathan Lovitz has the quote, "It doesn't have to happen to you for you to give a damn."
Exactly.
Right?
Yeah.
And we've talked a lot about climate disasters here that have affected us here, but the rest of the world that is not as well developed as us also has climate disasters going on that are truly devastating because they are truly not ready, right? We talk about tsunami relief overseas. We talk about all that sort of stuff. There are ways to give back to the community and to help address this. And I would encourage anybody in an agent capacity who has the ability to give to charity for those sort of disasters to do so, right? Because those kind of calamities could be knocking on our doorstep next, and we are a global community, right?
Absolutely. I everything you said times 10. Like, seriously, Cody. I'm glad you're so eloquent in the way that you communicate that. Seriously, I couldn't have done it better myself. So yeah, and that's exactly it. Climate change is one of those weird things, weird concepts that it's experiential. It's like, if it doesn't happen to you directly, you don't really pay attention to it. But I'm telling you that you are being impacted one way or another, either directly or indirectly. I forget who said it, but the very first place that you'll feel climate change is in your wallets. So the price of goods, the price of construction materials going up. And that's just a big sign of what is to come if we don't mitigate climate change as much as we can. It's going to get way worse if we don't. So
That's it. And I think, it relates a lot to a lot of the DEI initiatives that we lead, where, the youth get it and the older generation is having to come along and figure this out in a more determined manner. It takes some effort, right? But the difference is, I think with a lot of our DEI stuff, we can see that in the future, these sorts of people will be more accepted. That's just the way the tides turn. I
Hmm.
don't think that it's the same with climate action. This is going to take a concerted effort. It's not a given that our world is going to get greener and better and more understanding, that we need to use solar and energy efficient vehicles, unless we do the work,
Hmm.
right?
Exactly. Yeah. Um, through coming together is where the solutions will arise. And what I mean by that is, if we can go on a little bit of a tangent, I'm a huge fan of Simon Sinek. He popularized, uh, it wasn't his original thought, but he popularized it, the diffusion of innovation. And so, if you don't know what the diffusion of innovation is, that's that. Oh, darn it. I can't really see on here. I'll do it in front of my body here. So, it's like the bell curve of the population distribution. So as people come on board, the early adopters of that concept, they are the ones thinking about it. They're coming up with solutions. But when we get the majority of folks on there, the people that are in the trenches, like the average tradesperson, that are becoming more aware of this and thinking about it, it's like, oh, they can now bring ideas to the table to, you know, expedite climate action and the solutions to the climate crisis that we're facing. So I'm very excited. Like, I have a tremendous amount of hope, actually, because it is. I mean, it's getting worse at the same time. At the same time, we're also getting a lot more people on board and more
Mm-hmm.
ideas to the table. So I have a tremendous amount of hope. I can't wait to see the ideas that come out to, you know, mitigate the climate change, but also adapt to it. Um, like, obviously, I'm not looking forward to actually having to adapt to climate change, but but you know, human innovation. There's like no limit to it.
It's
Um,
true.
if
Yeah.
if the mind can conceive it, you will achieve it. So
Yeah.
I'm
Yeah. I
really
think
looking forward to it.
renewable energy is just around the corner. We just got to keep plugging away at it, right? I think that's, and strides are being made, right? I drive through rural Indiana to go to a water park and theme park that we like to go to, and the entire drive there is cornfields and giant wind fans as far as the eye can see, more than you can count, like stars in the sky, which for rural Indiana, that's progress, right? So things are happening, it's it
Yeah, the
it's
question
it's
is, can
positive.
the ship turn fast enough? And that's
Yeah.
what we're talking about here, right?
Right. And what we're doing is we're asking everybody listening to this
Mhm,
to grab the wheel and help turn it, right?
mhm. Yeah, exactly. And I do want to go back, if we could talk about it for just a little bit longer. The climate anxiety, the climate dread. Um, when you start talking with people, you're going to get that support group to talk about it, and the importance of that is paramount, because as an individual, if you're filled with anxiety and dread, you're not going to be beneficial to your community around you, because when you're, sorry, my alarm's going off here. When you're um, you're overwhelmed, right? So how can you contribute if you are in that state of mind? You can't really. So it's also very important to have that support network that you can reach out to and be like, oh, I'm feeling really down about it today, like, help me get out of this funk, and like, and they're going through it too. And so when you come together and you realize that there are people that are like-minded, like you going through the same situation, or maybe not the same situation, but it is a climate situation, and then you can work together to get out of it. And the sooner you get out of it, the sooner you can take more action. And that's what it's all about, is taking as much action as you can to help um, mitigate the climate change without getting burnt out.
Yeah, exactly. I think there's a synergy session bubbling in there between Climate Action Network and Healthy Mind Collective, right?
I've talked
Um,
about it for a very long time.
yeah,
I can't look forward to that conversation.
yeah, yeah. That's always a wellspring of ideas here when we get together. Alex, I just want to thank you very much for joining us here on the CultureCast. I hope everybody got as much out of this as I did. And you can join us bi-weekly for this CultureCast here at the DEI at EXP YouTube channel or live on Workplace. I also would encourage you to go and join the Climate Action Network. Just search EXP Can in Workplace and go join that group and join that conversation today. It's so active, it's so vital, it's such a lifeblood driven group that is alive and breathing and ready for you to come and contribute, right? You can also join the Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Workplace group, where you can get more updates about events like this one if you like this. You can also follow this podcast on Spotify or Apple Podcasts if you like listening rather than watching the YouTube videos. Again, Alex, thank you so much for joining me today.
You're very welcome. Thanks for having me. And if anyone is interested in joining our team, because we have a lot of stuff that we're doing here at the Climate Action Network and we're looking for volunteers, we do have a form on the EXP Climate Action Network Workplace group. Click on that link, fill out that form, and one of us will reach out and we will be in touch.
Fantastic. Thanks, everybody. We'll see you soon.
Bye, everybody.